Hello, welcome to Media Bistro's product marketing course. This is lesson 2, understanding markets, customers, and pricing. This is Gerardo Dada. Here's my Twitter handle in case you want to follow me. Please do. And thank you for spending the next 45 minutes or so with me on this lesson. This is the second lesson of 4. By now you should have taken the product marketing role lesson. And we have 2 more to go. In this lesson, we will chat about understanding markets and customers. What are the key processes and tools that we can use to gather customer knowledge? What are the benefits for each one of these tools and the challenges? We'll talk about some of the models that exist to capture market intelligence into a market model that can be used to either communicate the market strategy or to inform the overall company or marketing strategy. And last, we'll spend some time on pricing concepts and pricing tactics. Why is customer knowledge so important? This is a chart that I found just a few days ago, published by the CMO Council from April 2013. If you look at the data, basically 90% of senior marketers don't have enough data or would like to get more data because they're missing important data to understand their view of customers. This is actually pretty scary, or actually highlights an opportunity and how valuable this data is and how difficult it is to get. In the last lesson, we talked about how product marketing should influence this entire life cycle of the product, from market opportunity to building to selling to end of lifing a product, and how customer knowledge is essential to make any of the decisions here. Customer knowledge should inform customer segments naturally, customer requirements, determine what are the proof points, will help you identify influencers, launch the right go-to-market strategies, the right messaging, the right customer retention, and do a good job in end of lifing a product. So it's basically the essential ingredient for a product marketing person to do their job. And let's start with some market definitions. And I apologize if they're too basic, but I understand some people will still want to get some of these definitions in place just to be 100% clear. The market is the easiest one, right? It's the universe of buyers or an entire industry, often a market where a company or a group of companies plays. A segment is just a subset of that market that shares certain characteristics. And those characteristics are not set in stone. It could be a segment based on buyer profiles, like students, or buying preferences, or pricing tiers, or quality, or what have you. There are many ways to segment a market. They're never set in stone. A niche is basically a market segment. It's the same thing. It's different in 2 ways. One, it's usually smaller than a traditional market segment. It's relatively small compared to the overall market, to the point that where it is not usually very attractive for large players to play in, or at least to do any customization or launch any focused efforts in a market niche. And it has unique needs, meaning that smaller companies or companies that are trying to enter a market can go after a market niche to get some traction. Target market means basically a market segment or a niche or multiple of those where a company is focusing its efforts. And within any market segment, niche, or target market, even inside of those, there could be use cases where there are buyer profiles. A buyer profile basically tells you everything you need to know about somebody who is a buying person in that market, somebody who's going to make that buying decision. And it could be either the primary person making the buying decision, or somebody who's influencing that buying decision, or somebody who approves that buying decision, especially in B2B marketing. Personas are a little bit misunderstood. The persona is, sorry for the redundancy, but it's a personification of the buyer profile. So if in a market we're saying, look, our buyer profile is a student that is, 18 to 24 years old, goes to college in a small university in a town, and so on, that describes what a buyer profile is. And you probably heard definitions of 2.5 kids, etc. Well, no one has 2.5 kids. So the persona takes that and tries to make it very human, very personal. Meet Joe. Joe goes to Oklahoma University, and he's trying to make a major in communications, and this is his budget, and add more attributes so it becomes more vivid and a tool that people can use as they're going through the marketing process or building products, thinking, how would Joe feel about this? How would Joe receive this message? Is somebody like Joe being able to afford this product? Ideally, once you're done with this process, you will have not only a very clear understanding of the market and available segments, and you will have a target set of markets, and within those markets you will have identified what are the buyer profiles, and you will have developed personas for those buyer profiles. Great. So in spirit of market research, what do we want to know about customers? And this is a crucial question, because oftentimes marketers will launch surveys trying to ask questions about all sorts of things, and I'm sure if you if you live in this planet and you're connected to the internet, you probably have completed market research surveys that ask you so many dumb questions that don't make sense to you, or asking for information there's no way that they can be turned into something useful. So the first rule of market research is only ask for information that is not only interesting, but information that you can use to make a decision. For example, if you are doing a market survey and you're asking your customers for their zip code, if you don't have anything that you're going to change your marketing or provide information back to customers using their zip code, then why ask it? Skip that, move to the next question. Also, knowing what to ask customers, knowing what we want to know can be the guiding light that guides our research. And there's basically a few categories. The first one is around markets and customers. How are customers grouped into market segments? Customer segmentation is an entire science or an art, and there's not one way of doing it. Some people do it based on demographics, some people do it based on price budgets. I think the easiest way to do this is via needs. I think that's the most powerful way of doing this, needs-based segmentation. And the most complex way of doing this, which is probably the most powerful, is based on actionability. Again, back to the idea that customers should be segmented based on how we can help them and how we, the company, can interact with them, which can go beyond their needs. And sometimes it's a match. The second part we want to know is, what is the lifetime customer value? So meaning, if there are multiple customer segments, what is the profitability of each one of those segments? Which customers have more propensity to buy, have bigger budgets, are larger in size, etc.? Which one brings basically bigger opportunities for the company? Third thing, which is very interesting, is which markets have unmet needs. Meaning, if a market has a need or a segment of the market, a typical buyer profile has a market need, an entrepreneur will see an opportunity there immediately, right? And anytime there are unmet needs, it's easier to go into that market than going into a market that's already fairly satisfied with the products that are available, because it's going to be hard to make them to change. The next question is about reachability. So this covers two things. One is, which customer segments or types of customers are predisposed to do business with the company, either because of their profile or their affinity or the brand, etc., etc. And then reachability is more about, okay, if we decide to go after this segment of the market, how easy it is to identify those customers and reach them in a cost-effective manner. There might be some customer segments that are easy to find. For example, if you're trying to find people who already bought a house, there are companies who sell those lists, and as soon as you purchase a house, there's some process that this company gets all those names, and if you ever purchased a house, you've probably seen that happen. In fact, as soon as you list a house on the MLS system, you start getting marketing and postcards and so on from moving companies, right? So that's a market that is easy to reach. However, if you're trying to find people who are thinking about having kids, that's probably much harder. You can start with some age differences and some age ranges, and probably people who've been married in less than 5 years and so on. But it's a lot harder to get that information. If you're trying to find people who have a certain behavior towards purchasing, so who are the early adopters of technology, that's even much harder to reach. So that's something to take into account. What is the value proposition that will resonate with each segment? So after you understand each segment, it's critical to understand what are the things that they are looking for. What are their buying criteria, basically? We already talked about understanding the buying profiles and the buying personas for each one of those segments. Of course, the personas don't exist. Those you can do creatively, knowing that you're going to have to trade off specificity and have to generalize. And talking about the value proposition, you need to understand what are the key pain points. What are the pain points for each buyer segment, and which of those pain points are not served or are not fully served by existing products or services? going back to having unmet needs. The second category that I think is where marketers can spend a lot more time is understanding how customers buy. Understand how customers buy, meaning what is the buying process? How do they make buying decisions? And this sounds very logical, but it's amazing how little information we have about this. The buying process is basically a series of questions, and the buying process can be happening in a customer's mind in a matter of seconds as they are looking at packaging in a retail store. Or it could be a year-long process in a B2B environment, having multiple buyers, multiple steps in the process, and a very sophisticated system of influencers and buyers and decision making and politics and so on. Either way, it's very important that you understand what goes in the mind of your customer to the buying process. I'm not talking about the traditional funnel, which is attention, interest, decision, and so on. I'm really thinking, what are the things that customers, how do they start their journey? So to help you in this process, when they have a need, first, what is that trigger that gets a customer into buying mode? What is the thing that happens that gets people thinking, I need to, for example, buy a new car? Is it because your car is already 5 years old? Is it giving you trouble? Is it just because you like the new models? Is it the end of the year? Is it because you're getting a bonus check at the end of each quarter and so on? And once you make the decision or are interested in making a purchase, who do you think first to help you solve the need? Meaning, what are the companies that are coming to mind for these customers? Either companies or solutions or people that can help them either solve the need or get them started on that buying process. Meaning, how do they do research? Do people ask their friends, their peers? Do they go online and do research? How much? Do they go for experts? Are there any publications? Are there printed guides and so on? Who influences them is key. So are they influenced by the media? Are they influenced by certain personalities? I mean, if you're in the book market, Oprah certainly has a ton of influence. The stars and the ratings on Amazon and other bookstores online have tremendous influence in a book buyer. What about conferences and blog posts and so on? So understanding that influence process. And their buying criteria. Buying criteria means, what are the absolute things that a product must have, and what are the things that are going to make me more wanting to buy a product or a service? So in thinking about buying criteria, it's important to distinguish what is the minimum acceptable level of a particular factor in a product or service, and what is something that will enhance their value. So this is what some psychologists and business people used to talk last century as a hygienic factor, for example. So using an example of a service, hotel cleanliness. If a hotel is clean, it satisfies you to a point only, right? So if you go to a hotel and it's not clean, it is a hygienic factor because it will make you not want to stay at that hotel ever again. But if a hotel is super clean, it's not gonna be the main decision that is gonna make you want to stay in a particular hotel versus a hotel that is only really clean, right? So those buying factors lose their value in a buying process as soon as the minimum is met. Where there are other factors that come into play after that, right? How nice is a pool, or pricing, and so on, and some that stay constant, like pricing. What is a complete solution for customers? A complete solution means not thinking about your company or product. So imagine your company did not even exist, and a customer has a particular need. What are the entirety of products and services that are going to make them become satisfied? So if you're using the previous example, if you're buying a house, well, you not only need the realtor, but you need the movers, and you need to transfer your TV package. So it's such a complex process that there are many aspects of that whole experience that can be combined into a solution. And understanding how that works as an entire buying set, or a thing that customers want to get solved, helps you define what are the products that they could buy, who are the companies you can partner with, even find those triggers that will help you identify customers in that process. And the last section of questions is about your existing customers. Naturally, you want to understand what is their level of satisfaction. Are they happy with your company or not? And this is not only satisfaction, but also actually loyalty, right? The reason you want to care about satisfaction is for two things. One is, am I doing the right things to get these customers to stay with my company and keep bringing business to me? And modern thinking says that if you ask customers if they're satisfied, that is not enough to keep them loyal, and you need to ask them what researchers call the ultimate question, which is, would you actually recommend this company to somebody else? Why? Because satisfaction is historic, meaning it's about the past, not about the future. So you might have been very satisfied with a company because it met your needs, but you don't think it's going to help you in the future. And also, it is based on a set of expectations, and it's not a predictor of future behavior. Whereas loyalty, if you think a company is doing a good job and you're willing to recommend it to a friend or a colleague, you're basically putting your reputation on the line, and you're saying you're willing to recommend it. You're really saying that you think it's the best company in the industry that can provide a service. The next question you want to know is, the next thing you want to know about your existing customers is, what are other products and services they want to buy next, they will need next in the process. Either can point to an opportunity to upsell customers into a higher price product, into a different category of products that you already sell, or into new areas where your company might not be offering products, and can point to an opportunity to expand your product portfolio. And last, the second reason why you want to ask customers if they're satisfied is to know, what are we doing wrong? What can we do better? What are the things we need to do differently as a company? And all this information could be fundamental to inform your marketing strategy. Of course, this is not 100% complete. This is just giving you a starting point, or the type of things you want to think about when you think about market research and when you're thinking about customers. So, research challenges. I really like this quote from Albert Einstein that basically says that there are a lot of things that a lot of data you can capture, and a lot of metrics you can get, and a lot of things that can be measured. But those things are not necessarily what are important for a business, and all the things that are important for a business are not necessarily easy to measure. Meaning, just because your company has an ability to capture certain data about customers doesn't mean it's the most meaningful. And second, I think the most important part of this is that there are many things about how customers think and about customers buy that are very hard to put in numbers and spreadsheets, because people buy based on emotions. Let's chat about some of the challenges that make market research harder. The first one is the dilution of simple explanations. In most research cases, I think it's human nature to find a simple answer. You want to find the one thing that will make customers buy more product. You want to find the one marketing activity that got them to buy. You want to find the one thing that has a correlation to customer loyalty and satisfaction. The problem is that our mind is very complex, and our minds usually take into account so many things that are impossible even for humans to even know what are all the elements that go inside your brain to make a buying decision. Trying to simplify this to one single answer, it's really hard. So we shouldn't try to find what is the one answer. We should try to find how much influence a certain aspect or a metric had into the buying process. The second one is what I call the mirage of data. The mirage of data is simply the idea that just because you have data, or you will have the answers, or probably in a more practical terms, the answer must be in the data. Meaning, if we can get more data, if we can do more research through traditional market research, we will be able to find the answer. And sometimes the answers that you're looking for are not in data. They're not quantifiable. They're just emotional things that you can only get when you talk to customers one-on-one. The third challenge is something that behavioral psychologists call confirmation bias, which basically means once somebody's made a hypothesis, we tend to look for data that confirms that hypothesis, and we tend to ignore the data that goes against our theories. This is just natural human behavior. I do it all the time. Most people listening to this lesson probably do it one way or another. Yeah, I think another way of putting this in terms of purchasing criteria, how people buy, is people make emotional decisions and then try to justify them rationally. So in the buying process, you decide you want to buy a car, and then you try to find, well, it has better resale value and the warranty is great, and you try to find all the things that will make it easier for you to justify that purchase to yourself or even to your significant other. Applying this to market research, you sometimes have a hypothesis, hey, our target customer is like this and they need this kind of solution, and you tend to ignore the data that disproves that theory that you have. So it's something you need to be aware of and try to minimize. And there are a number of challenges when you're doing traditional surveys. And surveys are fantastic because they can be automated. You can survey thousands of people or millions of people and get a ton of data. And they are easy to quantify, and you can come up with nice charts and graphics like the one I showed. So I'm guilty of that. But the problem is that this type of research has a number of biases. The first one is in bias in the panel. So even in the chart that I showed earlier about the 90% of CMOs that don't see more need for having customer data, well, there was a certain list that this company used, that this market research firm used to ask that question, which probably was not 100% accurately representative of the total population of market leaders across industries and geographies. So even in the way that they selected the panel of people to answer those questions, there's already some bias. This is probably the easiest one to address. But then there's a bias in the response, right? So if you have a market research study that says, hey, spend 40 minutes with us and you will have a chance to win an iPad, that time commitment, the willingness to respond to a survey, the person who has the time to answer to that survey and spend 40 minutes of their day doing that, and the people who will be attracted to win an iPad, it's already adding another level of bias. You can make an argument that the people, the longer the survey, you're gonna find people who have nothing to do and therefore are less likely to buy. Maybe people who are unemployed and they don't have any money. Or maybe if you try and sell to executives, you could say, well, most executives don't have 40 minutes. And even when you say, hey, here's a market, I just need you to answer one question about your knowledge of customers and how much you know about your customers. The type of people who will answer the question are people who already have an opinion about that. And maybe the people predisposed as people who don't have enough customer knowledge to answer the question. So there's already a bias in the response. There's also bias in the questions themselves, right? Even how you ask the question, the language you use can do that, but even the options when you have a survey that is meant to give you quantitative information can be biased. So if at the end of this survey, I ask you a question and the only three options to rate this lesson, and the only three options will be, you think it's good, you think it's great, you think it's awesome, chances are that 100% of the respondents will say that they like my course. And probably because I didn't ask and add a question, an answer option of saying, it's mediocre, or it sucks, it's terrible. Even the balance between positive and negative is going to impact your response. If you have a scale from 1 to 5, it's going to have a different impact than you have a scale from 1 to 10. And again, this is just the nature of surveys. It's not something you can easily address. It's something you can be mindful of, and you can try to minimize, but at least being consistent in the way you ask these questions in multiple surveys, so that will show you a trend over time. And then there's a bias in the analysis, again, because of the confirmation bias and all these things, and the interpretation of the data. The way that people look at data and the insights that they derive are going to be different from person to person. There's going to be a bias based on your background, based on your understanding of the data, and based on what you want to know. Here's an example. In a company, we were looking at our market research, and one of our marketing people was assuming that, we asked a question, and the question was, what is your title? And a lot of people said they were CEOs. And so the person in marketing interpreting the results to make decisions about how business versus how technically oriented or communication should be, assumed that somebody who answers I'm the CEO meant it was a business person with no technical background. When we looked into the people who were responding, we found that they were mostly engineers, highly technical people who were starting their own company, and therefore they were proud to say they were CEOs of their own company, but that didn't mean at all that they even have any business background, and absolutely they were very technical. And so there are more research challenges. This is just an example of what you want to be mindful of. One key way to minimize bias is that if instead of looking at data in absolute, you look at data over time, as long as those biases stay constant, you can definitely find insights into how the data is changing over time. Great, let's talk about the tools that are available to get this data and get research done. First, let's chat about traditional research. We already talked about surveys. Polls are an easy way to get small data points, but if you do this continuously and you have a lot of people, for example, going to your website, and you make it easy for them to answer a single question poll, and you do this every single day, you might be able to gather an enormous amount of information over time. Surveys are very challenging for the reasons we talked about. The main challenge, I think, is also the ability to get quantitative information, things that you can put in an Excel spreadsheet and present in a chart from 1,000 of people is very attractive, but also can be very misleading. Oftentimes, the best surveys are those who have very few and very simple open-ended questions, and they take a lot of time to process. At one of the companies I work with, I had a stack of papers, probably 5 inches high, full of open-ended responses from our customer base, and I took the time for reading every one of those. It took me multiple days to do that, but it was the only way I could really get into the minds of our customers and get the information and knowledge that is not able to put in charts or in percentages or in absolute numbers. The second type of research, and this is not traditionally known as a research tool, but definitely web metrics. Any company has a website with enough traffic is probably using web metrics. There's tools like Google Analytics that are free nowadays. They're very sophisticated tools that will show you pathing and how customers are, what are customers clicking, or their journeys inside your website. In my experience, what I've observed is that aside from mostly two market niches or two market industries, which are typically retail and media, most marketers don't even know their basic web metrics. Most product marketing managers don't know how many visitors per month they get to their website, where they come from, what is the entry point to the website, what are the pages that have better SEO, what are the paths that people go around, where do they click, and so on. And that can give you tremendous information. Even just looking at your logs at what are people searching for in the search box in your website will tell you incredibly valuable information. So go talk to your web team and get some web metrics. Another tool that is very powerful and not used very often by companies is having a customer advisory council. A customer advisory council, basically, it's a form of market research that allows you to handpick a small group of customers that meet your ideal customer segment. They really match your customer profile. They are good examples of your target market persona. And you invite them to either via phone or in person to just spend some time with you to talk about the company and your products and how you can do a better job. Usually people who are really committed to a business are very willing to be part of a customer advisory council, people who are really passionate about a topic, because they think they are experts in that field and they're very willing to provide their knowledge, and they want to have an opportunity to shape the future products that are coming out. I've done this myself in multiple areas where products I consume that I'm passionate about, from photography to coffee to other things. And the advisory council could be a group of people that might change slightly over time, but it becomes kind of a coach that you can always go back to the group and ask them questions about pricing, about, hey, does this messaging make sense? What do you guys think about this product? How do you think we should solve this problem? Well, if we launch this product, you think it will be useful for you, and so on. A very powerful tool. The next one is called win-loss analysis, and very few marketers spend enough time on this. There are many CRM tools that allow you to get some information about why you're losing deals and why you're winning deals. Part of the challenge is that the behavior of most salespeople is just their nature. They like selling and they like working with customers and one-on-one. They don't really enjoy putting information in a CRM system. And the information they will put in a CRM system is always going to be biased. Even if you go and ask salespeople, you will get very valuable win-loss information. So that should be absolutely the first step if you have an opportunity to go and spend time in person with salespeople, but also having a third party go directly to your customers and ask them, why are you doing business with this company? What are the factors that made you make that decision? How satisfied are you with that choice? What do you think about the competitors? And the same questions when you lost the deal. Why you did not do business with this company? Which company did you select? What was your buying criteria? That could be absolutely gold for any product marketer. Having a third-party company that can do this independently eliminates a lot of the bias we talked about before. And it's really because of those biases that it's really important to do this with a third-party company. There's also A/B testing. So some companies, if you most of your customers visit your website or spend time online with you, there are many tools to do A/B testing, either manually or actually you can do A/B testing in the real world, or you can do multivariate testing, which is a little bit harder. But the idea basically is that you can hone in and you can test a hypothesis and really find out what's working with your customers. How you do this in the real world, I'll tell you a story. We went to a trade show and we had a product that was a new product to a new market. We were not sure who was the right customer, what was the right messaging, and so on. So we had two different sets of booth messaging. So during half of the trade show, we had one message with one look and feel and one oriented towards one type of buyer. In the middle of the trade show, we completely changed our booth to something different with different messaging. And we paid a lot of attention to the type of customers that were stopping by, what were they interpreting our company did, how much they were interested in talking to us, what kind of solutions they were expecting from a company that had this type of messaging. So this was kind of an offline way of doing A/B testing. The beauty is you can do this in minutes online if you have the right discipline. The key naturally is that you only want to test one variable at a time. And it's part of the challenge, but also the beauty of A/B testing. You can make multiple tests over time, as long as you only change one variable every time. The next step of research, it's a sales funnel analysis, which basically means if you understand how your customers go from one stage to another in buying process. And again, we're not talking about traditional sales funnel. We're talking about they go to the website, to the proposal, or in person, they go from getting an ad to clipping a coupon to going to the store to walking down the aisle to picking a couple of products in the shelves and so on. And you understand how those stages work, then you can identify bottlenecks, meaning what are the parts of that process, like a system, where your customers are leaving the process or going to a different product or just deciding not to buy. And there's not one methodology to do this universally, but I hope that this gives you an idea of things you can do. Then there is first-person research. First-person research is the type of research that will require more investment from your perspective in terms of time. It can be very onerous, but it's extremely valuable. Just like spending time with customers on an advisory council or asking salespeople about what they're seeing in terms of win-loss, listening to sales calls, just being a silent listener in a sales call, where you have an opportunity to understand what are the customers' reactions, what are they asking, how much are they actively asking buying questions versus trying to understand your customers, what your product or your salesperson is saying about your products. Even gives you an opportunity to assess the training and the type of tool that you've provided to your sales tool. You might identify during a sales call that there are certain things that your salespeople should know, or there are certain tools that they could use to smooth the sales process. You might also want to go to industry trade shows where you have thousands or hundreds of buyers roaming around, often with a lot of free time. For example, I like just sitting in trade shows, finding the times where people have lunch, breakfast, dinner, and spending as much time as I can with buyers and ask them questions, or just be a silent listener and listen from them about what they're saying, what questions are they having, what are the topics that they're talking to each other, their colleagues. Or I ask them, what are the things that you found at this trade show that make you more excited? Or did you come to this trade show looking for a particular set of information? Are you trying to solve a problem? Or are you just trying to stay up to date? What other trade shows do you go to? What magazines you read, and so on. A lot of information there. Social media has a ton of information available to us. Customers, when they leave a review, they have a mindset where they're providing information to other buyers, to try to help them make a decision. So that's one of the times where they're not feeling like they are talking to somebody from a company. They're not talking to a market research person. They're not filling a survey. They're just trying to talk to other buyers like themselves. For this reason, reviews can be an extremely powerful tool. Whether they're reviews on your site, and most of the review platforms have analysis tools to help you find insights on those reviews, to reviews of your products or even competing products on some of the most important websites. There can be incredible amounts of insights that you can find there. You can also go to forums where customers look for other customers like themselves and ask them questions and try to solve problems. Quora and some of the other Q&A websites can be another source where you can see what questions people are asking, what kinds of answers, who are the influencers, or even ask some questions yourself. And naturally blogs as well, where some of the experts will present their point of views. Informal customer meetings, where you can, just like we mentioned, talking to them at a trade show, but setting up an informal customer meeting, setting up a dinner for your customers, finding a way just to chat with customers. If you sell, again, retail, for example, just walk around the aisles and ask people questions. And you know, initially you can ask them a question: what do you think about this product? Is it a good one or not? Down to more formal meetings where you bring in hundreds of customers together and ask them questions. This can be also extremely powerful. And last but not least, calling customers. In most industries, you will have a list of customers that has a phone number or an email, where you can just pick up the phone and call a few of them in a day and say, hey, I'm so-and-so from this company. I'm just calling to see, to understand how our company is doing, what kind of products should we be doing next, what are things that make sense for us to start offering, and ask them many questions. And obviously, as long as you don't call them during dinner or you're not trying to sell them anything, I found personally that most customers are very willing to spend a few minutes with you if you're respectful of the time. Great. Once you've captured a lot of this information, then it helps you inform if you're going to follow a traditional product development process, a traditional market requirements document, and it will also inform the product requirements document in more specific ways as it starts to talk about specific ways to solving a market requirement. And it should be essential information that is used for messaging document and for marketing materials. Meaning all this customer knowledge, again, is the secret sauce, is the essential piece of value that a product marketing manager can add to a company by informing this process. And therefore, market research is not something you do once. You might have bursts where you focus on market research, but it's something you need to be doing on an ongoing basis. And it's so easy for somebody in product marketing to focus on the market campaign or in some internal things that might be going on in the company, and we're always busy. You always have emails waiting for you. You need to make time to sharpen your saw and sharpen your pencil and go talk to customers, no matter how busy you are. It's essential for you to do your job. There's no way around it. Great. Let's step into the next section of this lesson, which is market analysis models. There are many ways to analyze a market. It's a complex science that is not something you can fit into a 40-minute session or a few minutes inside a lesson, not even in a single book. There are many books about this. So I want to share basically 4 key tools that are useful in doing market analysis. Some of them very basic, some of them a bit more sophisticated. You might decide that all of these are useful for you. You might decide none of this might be useful for you. You might decide that you want to use a combination of this or combine 2 or more of these into your own market analysis model. So these are the 4 that I'm going to talk about next. The first one is the SWOT analysis. The SWOT analysis is basically a quadrant. You typically have a single piece of paper or a PowerPoint slide, if you want, where you have 4 boxes, one where you will put the strengths, weaknesses, one for opportunities, one for threats. The important part of this is, one, you might already know what are the strengths and the weaknesses, opportunities and threats for your company, but the process of putting them down in a succinct way, where you only have a small number of bullets, and the process of doing this not only for your own company, for your product, but even for your competitors, will help you either do more thinking about the market, identify things that you don't know, that you wish you should know, or at least put things in a way that makes it easier for other people in the company, especially making strategic decisions, to understand the market, at least your point of view of the market. So this is a basic model. I'll add in the appendix a link to where you can see a little bit more about how to do this. But basically, it's a most fundamental model to do market analysis. Let's go to Porter's 5 Forces, published by Michael Porter. This is a more sophisticated model, allows you to assess a market in terms of how competitive is this market, how difficult it is for us to enter a new market, or how protected are we as a key player in a market. That's the essential function that this model serves for. And it has 5 boxes, or circles in this case. One is, what are the power suppliers? So as an example, if you once started a gasoline company like Exxon, or your Shell or Valero in Houston and so on, the supplier power is very strong. There are only a few refineries, the price is dictated in a central way, and most companies sell gasoline need to go get their gasoline from the same people. So suppliers have a ton of power in this market. Then there is buyer power. If you are selling homes and the market is down, then buyers are able to dictate price. There are probably going to be fewer buyers. They're going to be more in control of the buying process and the specs and so on. And basically this model is trying to capture what is that level of power that buyers have. Then there is on the right the threat of substitutes. How could customers solve this need with other solutions? How are other companies available to provide another solution? And how can customers simplify their lives by just eliminating this product or replace this part completely with something else? I mean, just look at Blockbuster. It recently basically shut down. Can you replace movie renting by looking at movies on demand and so on? That's a substitute. If you're in the business of bowling, for example, can people substitute bowling by something that's perceived to be more fun, like movies, right, at a certain time of the year? Or just stay at home and play video games? Those are substitutes. And then there's the threat of new entrants, meaning how difficult it is for other companies to get into this business. Using the same example used before, if you're Exxon or Shell or any of those, it's really hard for anybody to get into that business, right? You need a lot of infrastructure, you need a lot of money, you need a lot of best practice. There might be government regulation, there might be economies of scale, there might be know-how. That all those factors are taken into account in this model to understand how a market is shaped. And last, the rivalry. How competitive is this market already? How many companies are already competing? What is their ability to differentiate? So, for example, if you're thinking, I'm going to launch a new laptop line, I'm going to start a new PC company and sell my own laptops, there's tremendous competition in this market already. Not only there's a market that is very hard to get into from an economies of scale and knowledge and process and so on, but it's cutthroat competition, meaning there's price erosion, the margins are going down, there are people who are going to be pushing the suppliers under channel to cut you off. So that's another element of this 5 forces. Again, this can be fairly sophisticated model. I think it's worth if you're interested in doing market analysis. I'm also providing in the appendix a few links to where you can learn more about this. Another model to understand markets is what is called a magic quadrant. Magic quadrant is basically how a company called Gartner Research is doing technology analysis to help technology buyers make decisions about what companies they should look at in a specific solution set. But I think they can be applied to almost any industry in general. The quadrant basically has naturally 4 boxes, and on the right you have the depth or the completeness of a vision of a company. How solid is the strategy? How visionary they are? How much are they thinking about new business models? How quickly are they to adapt to market changes? How future-looking they are? And on the other axis is their ability to execute, which basically says how strong they are today, how strong is their current product offering, how much momentum they have, how big of a sales team they have, for example, could be loyalty and so on. And then you map every company in this industry with dots in this market, in this 4 boxes, relative to those 2 axes. Larger dot could mean it's a it's a larger company in terms of presence. Smaller dot can mean it's a smaller company just entering this market, or a niche player. And as you can see, the 4 quadrants are formed once you map the market companies playing in this market. These are the leaders who have very strong vision and a strong ability to execute. Those are going to be the bigger competitors. They're going to be a set of visionaries who have the vision but don't have the ability to execute. They're at risk. Then there are the challengers, who are the companies who have a strong offering today, but they don't have the vision to take the company forward, but you should still think about that. And then there are niche players who they don't have neither very good vision or very good execution. And the only reason they probably live in the market is because they're either entering the market and are growing, or they focus on a niche market, or they're on their way out. It's useful to see how your competitors map in this axis, not only statically but dynamically, meaning how their positions change over time, and also map your company in relation to the other players. This might help you understand your position before you make an investment in the market, or make your case for going after a market or for not going after a market. Great. The last analysis model is called Bullseye, and this is something that we developed recently. I don't think it's used by anybody else in the market, but basically the idea is you create a similar matrix where it's not focused on the competitors and the vendors on the market, the companies offering a service to the market. This is focused on buyers. And you map those buyers based on 2 factors. And naturally, every market has multiple factors. By choosing a set of factors, you're going to be tweaking this chart one way or another. So it's very important that you find the 2 buying factors that are more relevant to you. For example, the simplest one could be mapping price and quality, right? Or in terms of price, to make it go up as it goes horizontally or towards the upper right, it could be value. And the other one could be quality or technology or completeness of an offering. Then you have the red lines, which show the minimum level, accepted level from your customers. In this case, if it's value, well, if it's too expensive or it doesn't provide enough value, it doesn't meet the criteria. If the quality is too bad, it's just not going to be a player in this market. It's important to understand what is that threshold that you perceive to be the minimum for a particular market. Next step is, based on this, you might find that there are groups of buyers. Either buyers, in this case, it could be value buyers, or could be buyers that are looking for higher end quality, or buyers who are looking for a niche. Those are 3 boxes here that are used as examples. Then you map the competitors in relation to those markets and those 2 factors. How are these competitors serving the market in terms of, in this same example, value and completeness of their product or sophistication? And then last, you map where is your company playing in this industry and what is your sweet spot. This would illustrate in a more customer-centric way what are the groups of customers that you really should be going after, and in degrees of closeness to those group of customers, which are other customers that you will want to go after, and which competitors you might find in that industry. Or it might identify areas of the market that have enough buyers but does not have competitors right now. So again, just another idea and a tool that you might want to use. Great, let's go and switch gears now into pricing. Again, pricing is another topic that can be very extensive, and it's a science. It's fascinating, and there's tons and tons we can say about pricing. So I just want to start with some basic concepts. The way that most companies do pricing is be a cost plus pricing, meaning typically the accounting department is driving pricing, or finance means you do an estimate of your costs, and once you have costs, you add a markup number, which is basically the margins you think you can extract on the market, and that's how you bring the price. This pricing system typically, in many cases, can mean that you're leaving money on the table, and means also that you might be in a market that is more commoditized. And commodities are a very interesting word, because in most competitive markets, people will say they're commoditized. If you're using the same example as before, if you try and sell PCs, competing with HP, Dell, Lenovo, you might say, well, this market is commoditized. Even though it's a highly sophisticated piece of machinery that has taken decades to perfect, and there's incredible ways that you can differentiate. Another extreme of this could be water, and that's why I have this picture here. Look, over 70% of the planet is covered with water. Water literally falls from the sky, and yet this is a bottle of water in a hotel where I stayed in recently, less than a liter for $6, more expensive than gasoline. So how can you be in a market of things like water where it's really a commodity and it's so prevalent in the planet, and you can just open the faucet right next to the bottle and get water and still be able to charge $6 for a small bottle of water? And the answer is basically in the way that the companies look at it and the value that customers see. In this case, it can be convenience, it can be the perception of cleanliness of the water and purity or health. Can be other values that customers put on products that go beyond how companies are looking at those products themselves. Therefore, thinking that there's no additional value and resorting to price and cost plus pricing. When you realize that your product has more value, then you go into value-based pricing, which means this hotel probably thought, okay, so we have a lot of guests that stay in a hotel that are probably concerned about the quality of the water in our faucets, in our water system in this city for whatever reason, right or wrong. And they would want to have purified water they can trust. How much would these customers be able to spend on a bottle of water? Are they even putting this in an expense report where they don't even have to worry about the price? Are they people who have lots of money and paying $4 or $6 not going to make a difference? So basically, the difference in this value-based pricing starts with how much value customers see in this product and how much are they willing to pay, rather than thinking about what is our cost for this product and what is the margin we need to bring to the company. If you care about value-based pricing, in the appendix I have a link to a blog post I wrote. It's one of my most popular blog posts around the story of how the Concord turned around their business by switching from cost plus pricing to value-based pricing. It's a fascinating story. Great. So in terms of setting your pricing strategy, a fundamental idea is that price communicates value. Here are 3 tequilas, right? And by just looking at this picture, by looking at the prices underneath, you're already as a consumer making a judgment that the tequilas on the right are far better than the ones on the left. Look at that price gap between these products, right? We're not talking 20% higher. We're talking from one to the next is 5 times higher and then 10 times higher. So it's a 50 times price difference between the cheap product and the expensive product. These are actually real prices for real products that I saw online at Amazon.com. The tequila on the right shows another aspect of value that is communicated by packaging. And the bottom line here is that the price that you set for a product will tell people how good a product is. Meaning, if I told you, look, I found a fantastic tequila, it's very unique, it's imported from a friend who has a friend that has a limited production, and it's available for $5, it's not even believable. You cannot believe that is the price for a tequila that good. On the same way, if you open a bottle of tequila and it's made out of crystal and it's beautiful and it's very well designed, you will think that tequila is better, even if it's not, because packaging communicates value, and because customers are actually going to enjoy the more expensive tequila in a nicer bottle more than they will enjoy the cheap tequila in a plastic bottle. And by this I mean they will physically enjoy a higher level of taste and satisfaction, because their brain has been programming their mouth and the rest of the brain to telling it that it's a better tequila, and therefore you will enjoy it more. And this is the type of research that I find fascinating. You can read more about this topic called behavioral psychology in books like Dan Ariely's Predictably Irrational. But the fundamental idea is here that I want to leave you with is that the price you set communicates the value, and the packaging communicates value as well. There's this other concept called the pricing anchors. Pricing anchors are fundamental in setting a price. So here's an example. For whatever reason, I need to buy a water softener. I bought a new house, or we found that our water is too hard, whatever is the case. Most people don't buy water softeners very often. Actually, for me personally, I've been living in Texas for 15 years. Getting hard water is fairly common here. I've only bought it once. And so if you tell me, look, the Easy Water 1100 is $500, $550, is it a good deal? I don't know. I don't have any point of reference. I don't know if a water softener should be $100. I don't know if a water softener should be $1,000. So what happens if I show you this chart now? You have a good, a better, and best, and you have three prices. So what this pricing strategy does, or this tier pricing strategy does, is what people call Goldilocks. The first thing it does is it's establishing anchors, meaning it's setting you to understand that the range of prices for a water softener goes from around $500 to around $1,200. And that range is set on your mind. Once that range is set, it's very hard to change, and that will be the frame of reference that you will use to judge prices moving forward. Let me give you another example. If you think I'm going to buy a new car, you probably have a frame of reference in your mind about the price range. You might be thinking, based on your budget, I need to buy a car between 25, the type of car I want, based on the quality I need, is probably going to cost me $25,000 to $30,000, right? And you might not even consciously think about that, but by the time you walk in a dealership, that pricing range of $25,000 to $30,000 are the anchors that are going to make be the foundation based on which you're going to judge any price that dealer tells you as soon as you talk about a car. If somebody says, well, this car is $24,000, you're going to think it's cheap. If the dealer says it's $35,000, you're going to think it's out of your budget. Mostly independently of the quality of the car, the features, the equipment, and so on. Those are the pricing anchors that are going to be set in your mind. And that brings to this next bullet here, the Goldilocks pricing strategy that some companies use, which means if you read the Goldilocks story, when you have three options, it's human nature to think the lowest price option is probably too cheap for me. You don't want to go with the cheapest one. I also don't want to go the most expensive one. Maybe you're too conscious about the law of diminishing returns, or you don't want to spend too much money. You don't really need the top of the line water softener. We tend to choose something in the middle. And the reason why this is important, and it just sounds logical, but the reason why it's important is because if you only have one water softener, you only go with the Easy Water 2200 on your website for $750, because people don't have pricing anchors and they don't have a frame of reference and they don't have the other two to help them, they will not be comfortable making a buying decision. Meaning, adding the cheap and the expensive version products on your website or in your pricing strategy might help drive sales for the one in the middle, and they will be extremely valuable even if you never sell a single unit of the other two. They're just useful in setting those anchors. An experiment, I think, is also in this book from Dan Ariely, talks about a restaurant who had most of their entrees priced at, I don't know, $30, $40. And people were making their buying decisions based on what's on the menu, right? And the menu actually set some anchors. When you see a menu, you're usually cautious about not ordering the most expensive thing on the menu, no matter what the price is or no matter what that thing is. So what this restaurant did is they added a new dish. There was a crazy lobster caught in a certain way, prepared in a certain way, that was $250. And the result was that people felt much more comfortable buying the $40 and $60 entrees. So sales for those items in the menu skyrocketed in this particular restaurant just because the more expensive $250 lobster was on the same menu. And that's an important thing to think about, how people think about pricing. By the way, this happens both in B2B and in B2C. It happens when you're buying a cup of coffee at Starbucks and when people are making $1 million buying decision for a sophisticated piece of software. I've seen it work in all those instances. The way it works might be different, but the psychology is there. And again, people buy using emotional. People buy based on emotions and then justify rationally, even for $1 million purchases. So at the end, two more things you might think about is how this strategy of either Goldilocks might basically morph into pricing tiers, how you might want to have tiers of prices to go to different types of buyers or to establish pricing anchors, and how you might want to create bundles. bundles that might give customers better value, might increase your average order value, or might provide a more complete solution for customers. Or in many cases, bundles can have sort of the value of eliminating the uncertainty around pricing. So, for example, if you think about you might need, you're buying a house and you might want to have a lawyer check on your contract to make sure everything is fine. Because of the pricing anchors and even culture, we think lawyers are going to be super expensive. They're going to charge me a ton of dollars. There's probably going to be $250 to $400 an hour. So those are your pricing anchors, which might be completely misinformed. And it's going to be a couple of hours for a lawyer to look at all this paperwork. So it's going to be a couple $1,000. Yeah, I don't want to do that. If you're in the business of providing legal services, and that's the market you want to go after, being knowledgeable about that uncertainty and about those price anchors is fundamental in helping drive sales. So in this case, you might create a bundle that says, look, we're going to offer you a package where we're going to help you assess at the beginning, we're going to, your pricing, your documents for the sale of your house, and we're going to also look at all the documents for the purchase of your new house, and everything together is going to be $250. That eliminates uncertainty and gives customers all the services they need throughout a buying process, throughout an activity in their life that they might be willing to afford, whereas in the past they might have decided not to buy at all. Great. So that's a summary of pricing. So that concludes our lesson for today. And again, these are topics that are very extensive. They're a lot of fun. There's so many opinions and so many to be learned about them. My goal was to give you a high level point of view that gives you a few nuggets to guide you and to kind of get you thinking and building a marketing strategy and become the foundation for the next step. As additional resources, I mentioned this blog post about value-based pricing. There are 2 articles here about Porter's 5 forces. One is kind of the official document from Harvard Business Review where Mr. Porter was publishing, and another one is probably simpler to digest. There's an article about the SWOT analysis in case you need some help building one. And for your assignment, I'm basically encouraging you to take this knowledge and these ideas and use them to do a check on where you are in your company, in your marketing strategy, in your understanding of customers, markets, and competitors. And use these ideas to build a plan on how you want to improve those processes in your company. And how is your company doing pricing? Just do a quick check. Who is determining prices? What are the criteria they're using? Are they being creative enough? Are they doing this based on customer knowledge? Are you taking into account the psychology that goes into understanding value? And are you leaving money on the table? And with that, I want to thank you again, and I look forward to the discussion and talking to you in the next lessons. It's been a pleasure, and here's again my Twitter handle and the link to my blog. I really appreciate your time today, and have a great day. Thank you.